I wasn't supposed to be part of that night. Not in that small loft, not on that worn-out couch, and definitely not in that moment. But life has this strange way of pulling you into the very places you thought you'd left behind. It bends your careful plans, breaks your expectations, and leaves you standing in the middle of your own confusion, wondering how everything changed so fast. I used to think my life was steady, simple, safe. I believed love was something sure, a promise that stayed. But sometimes love doesn't end with shouting. Sometimes it ends in quiet. A quiet so deep, you start to forget what your own voice sounds like. When he left, he didn't even look me in the eye. 4 years together, and all I found was a short note on the table, a rushed apology, a door key placed like I was just someone passing through. I remember holding that key. It was just a bit of cold metal catching the kitchen light. But the longer I stared at it, the more it seemed to press into my skin until I couldn't tell if the sting came from the edge or from the truth that everything I had trusted disappeared. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that presses on your chest and makes every thought heavier than the last. That's when I called Brooklyn, my oldest friend. She was the kind of person who could hear your pain just by the way you breathed. Before I could explain, she gently cut in. "Pack a bag. You're staying with me tonight." She didn't need the full story. She just knew. That's the kind of friend Brooklyn was. The kind of showed up without being asked. I agreed instantly. Because at that moment, leaving felt like the only way I could breathe again. I didn't want to sit in that apartment another second, surrounded by reminders of what used to be. Brooklyn's place was different. A tall old building on the edge of the arts district, the kind that looked like it had carried 100 memories before ours. Warm brick walls, high ceilings, sunlight that slid through huge windows like it wanted to wash away the past. Even when it was quiet, that place felt alive. When I arrived, Brooklyn hugged me and whispered, "You'll have the place mostly to yourself. Eli's out of town." Eli, her older cousin. I remembered him faintly from years ago. The quiet one at family events, the songwriter who always seemed to be somewhere in his own thoughts. Back then, he felt distant, like someone who lived half in daydreams. So, when Brooklyn said he wouldn't be around, I felt relieved. I needed stillness, not people, a place to hurt without having to hide it. For 2 days, I barely spoke. I moved like a shadow through Brooklyn's loft, drinking tea I couldn't taste, watching the sky change through the window. Then on the third evening, the front door clicked open. I paused. Footsteps moved slowly down the hall. Calm, steady, familiar. Eli. He wasn't the quiet kid I remembered. He had grown into someone who carried calm the way others carried noise. His hair was a little messy in a natural way. A soft sweatshirt, relaxed jeans, and the peaceful presence that filled the room without trying. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod, warm, easy, just enough to remind me I wasn't invisible. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low and gentle. I whispered a quiet hello, and that was it. Our first exchange in years, 2 short words hanging between us. The next few days slipped by. We spoke only when needed. A polite smile at breakfast. A quiet thank you when passing the TV remote. 2 people sharing space while pretending not to notice how aware they were of each other. That worked for me. I didn't want connection. I wanted space, air, quiet. But silence doesn't stay empty forever. One evening, I couldn't take the walls anymore. I stepped outside for a short walk. The cool autumn air brushed my cheeks as the city hummed under soft streetlights. Leaves rustled across the pavement like small reminders that the world kept moving. When I returned, the loft smelled faintly of herbs and warm food. Eli sat on the couch, one foot resting over his knee, a simple drink on the table beside him. The TV flickered softly, a light-hearted romance movie, something familiar but not specific. I raised an eyebrow. "You watch these?" I teased gently. He glanced over, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Only on tough days," he said. I laughed. Really laughed for the first time in weeks. 2 cups were already set out. He didn't ask me to join, but he didn't need to. I sat on the opposite end of the couch. Not close, but not distant either. The movie filled the quiet. Soft jokes, warm scenes, the kind of comfort that surprises you when your heart feels tired. When the lead character confessed their feelings on screen, I felt Eli glance my way just for a moment. No words, no pressure, but in that small look, something inside me shifted. That moment was the quiet start of something new. Days slid into weeks. The loft found a gentle rhythm. Sunlight warmed the brick walls every morning. I began to recognize the sound of Eli's steps. Steady, patient, kind. We formed small routines, sharing morning coffee, leaving notes about errands, watching calm shows at night. Our conversations were simple, but beneath them was something warm and unspoken. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something softer, like comfort in winter. A gentle reminder that life still offered warmth. One night, I couldn't sleep. The clock glowed 2:41 a.m. I padded into the living room, wrapped in an oversized sweater. Eli sat there, the dim light of his lamp soft on his face, his eyes thoughtful but steady. "Can't sleep?" he asked, setting his phone aside. I shook my head. "You too." Without a word, he patted the open space beside him. A quiet invitation. I hesitated, then slowly sat down. We didn't talk at first. The silence wasn't heavy. It was listening. The city breathed softly outside. The hum of the fridge filled the room. Our breathing settled into the same slow rhythm. Then Eli asked, "Do you miss him?" The question surprised me. I looked down at the carpet, tracing nothing with my fingertips. "I'm not sure," I said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if I ever truly knew him." Eli turned, his expression calm, steady. Then in a soft voice he said, "Maybe it's better he left." There was no judgment, no pity, just honesty. And somehow that felt kinder than comfort. I looked at him for a long time, searching for something I couldn't name, but what I found was simple understanding, like he had watched people fall apart and rebuild enough times to know it was possible. I spoke slowly. "I think I'm more afraid of being seen than being alone." Eli breathed in softly, surprised by my honesty. He leaned forward just slightly and said, barely above a whisper, "Lena, you've always been worth being seen. You just didn't realize it." The words settled in my chest like warmth after a long, cold day. Something inside me loosened. The room felt smaller, like only the two of us existed in that moment. His hand rested near mine, not touching, but close enough that I felt the comfort in his presence, and before my thoughts caught up, my heart softened toward him. That night changed things, not because of anything dramatic, but because of what it showed me. Grief can turn you into someone you barely recognize, but sitting next to someone who understood quiet pain, I began to remember who I was before everything fell apart. Ellie didn't try to fix me. He didn't make promises. He just saw me. Not the broken version, me. And sometimes that's enough to begin again. The days after felt quiet, but different. Every look held a bit more meaning. Every small moment stayed a little longer. When he passed me in the kitchen, I remembered the warmth in his voice. When he smiled from across the room, my heart did something it hadn't done in months, it hoped. We never brought up that night. We didn't need to. Some things are too gentle for words. One morning, sunlight poured across the room as I made coffee. I turned to find him watching me, a soft smile on his face. "You seem more like yourself today," he said kindly. I didn't ask what he meant, I knew. Grief was no longer the center of my life, just a shadow behind me. And Eli, he had become quiet proof that healing doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes in steady presence, in shared silence, in the comfort of being truly seen. Weeks later, Brooklyn returned. The moment she noticed how naturally Eli and I moved around each other, she smiled knowingly but said nothing. One evening, as I packed to go home, Eli leaned against the doorway. "So heading back?" he asked gently. "Yeah," I said. "It's time." He nodded. No pressure, no grand words, just understanding. As I turned to leave, he added softly, "Don't disappear again, Lena." I smiled. "I won't." Walking out of that loft, I realized something important. Healing doesn't always mean letting go fast. Sometimes it means standing still long enough for the right person to notice you're quiet and remind you that you still matter. Eli wasn't part of the story I thought I was writing, but maybe he was the chapter I needed all along, because sometimes the quietest people leave the strongest echoes. If you've ever rebuilt after heartbreak, remember this: you don't need to rush. You don't need all the answers. Sometimes all you need is a safe place, a little quiet, and someone who sees who you're becoming. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. And tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone who helped you find yourself again, just by being there? Because sometimes the calmest people become the brightest part of your healing.